everyone is sleeping.
He's a traitor.
In the soundproof cellar, this cat comes creeping.
He's a traitor.
Through the day, he takes a rock and roll.
Rock and roll traitor, rock and roll traitor.
But in the night, he takes the pop and soul.
Rock and roll traitor, rock and roll traitor.
He's the rock and roll traitor.
Rock and roll traitor.
Yes, he's the rock and roll traitor.
Rock and roll traitor.
He's a traitor. He's a traitor.
Well, he wears a straight band, he combs his hair back.
He's a traitor.
And everybody thinks that he comes from way back.
He's a traitor.
But he's a part-time rocker, he's a plastic Ted.
Rock and roll traitor, rock and roll traitor.
A little does he know there's a price in his head.
Rock and roll traitor, rock and roll traitor.
He's the rock and roll traitor.
Rock and roll traitor.
Yes, he's the rock and roll traitor.
Rock and roll traitor.
Rock and roll traitor. In his big bell bottoms, you should see him moving.
He's a traitor.
With all his disco friends, he sets the party grooving.
He's a traitor.
But he's a feeble angel on his moped bike.
Rock and roll traitor, rock and roll traitor.
And if the guys find out, they're gonna take his life.
Rock and